Happy Halloween. Grown-ass man. Grown-ass man play with toys. Not ashamed of it. Not ashamed. Hi there folks, Professor Thorgi, Aaron. I'm back. I said I'd be back, I said I'd be making more videos, and here I am. Thank you all for supporting that first video. I am back once again, and this is part one of my three-part Halloween videos. I am a huge fan of Halloween. It is my favorite holiday, has been ever since I was a little kid, so I wanted to do something special for Halloween here. And what I thought of is I found a little challenge online, a little challenge on Tumblr, to list off for 30 days your favorite horror movies assigned to whatever title they gave you to do. So, like day one they would give you a task of say your favorite zombie film, and you would have to list it. And I thought that would be really cool, except I didn't find it until like a week ago, and Halloween is in tomorrow-ish. Who knows whenever you're watching this. But I decided, you know what, instead of listing them all out for 30 days on Tumblr, which I will be doing on that site, as well as a Facebook challenge of the same variety that I found. You can go to my Tumblr page to find all that information. Here on this YouTube video, I am going to just run down those 30-day challenges and just tell you guys straight up which movies I chose, which ones I love, and it's just a way for me to celebrate how much I love Halloween. And for you guys in the comment section, feel free to share your answers to any of these questions below. Just a couple of ground rules on what I'm doing here. First off, these are just my opinions. I am not in any way stating for a fact that these things are the best ever of these particular categories. These are just the ones that I like, and I'm kind of a weird guy, so you're going to see a lot of odd picks in these. But also, I really wanted to make sure that I didn't have any repeats, so you might see one movie in one category and then you'll go, well, why isn't that in this one? It's because that's just how it worked out. But anyway, here we go. Day one, a horror movie that people would not expect you to love. For this one, I'm going to go with Hellraiser. That's right. I don't think anyone would expect me to like this, including myself. I didn't even see this movie until earlier this year because I'm not a fan of gore. I really do not like gore in horror films. To me, it is just overused. Like, I'm not a fan of the Saw films or the Final Destination films because they just load those things up with so much gore and it takes so much away from the movie. I'm not a fan of when they do that at all. And I mean, Hellraiser is about a dude who has no skin for the majority of the movie, and the villains are demons that put you in weird bondage S&M kind of torture devices. I didn't want to see this at all, but I figured, I'm a big horror movie fan. It's one of those, you must eventually see it so that you can call yourself a horror fan. I finally went ahead and thought, this thing is good. And I've watched several of the Hellraiser films ever since then, and like I said, I think that people overuse gore and they show too much of it. One of the things that I have to give the Hellraiser franchise a lot of credit for is, more times than not, they actually don't show the weird stuff they're doing. They just imply it heavily, and then your mind fills it in, which to me, that's the best way to create horror. Challenge number two, what horror film do you relate to the most? Hopefully not a lot of people out there can relate to any horror film, because that says something terrible about what's happening to you, and I'm very sorry for that. But for me, for the horror movie that I can relate to the most, Blair Witch Project. For those of you out there who don't know me, I grew up in the woods. And I don't mean I was surrounded by trees. I mean I grew up in the woods. I'm talking you had to get off the main highway to get on a smaller highway, and then get off that highway to get onto a dirt road, and then go to the end of that dirt road, and then just drive into the grass for a bit to reach my house. That is how far out in the woods I lived. Seriously. I could give you my address and you wouldn't be able to find it. That is how far out we were. So to me, growing up, getting lost in the woods was one of my biggest fears. That was always something that scared the hell out of me. The idea of going out of the woods and never being able to find your way back. And also, you grow up in the woods, you're pretty sure something is out there. And it probably wants your flesh. So when I saw a found footage film, which by the way, that's the found footage thing has come to mean nothing these days, because now these days found footage films are people who have 9 cameras and are just shaking them around. Found footage is now just a cheap way of filming, simply because you don't have to lay down any like tracks for your camera to roll around on. You don't have to set up a boom mic. You don't have to set up anything. You can just get that camera and you're good. But the Blair Witch Project, it was an actual found footage film. You watch that and you actually feel it's one camera, that's it, just one camera. It's that one tape just throughout the whole thing. So when you watch that, you actually kind of feel like you just found someone's footage. You feel like you are watching some people actually lost in the woods. And as someone who has gotten into the woods and gone, oh shoot, I don't know my way back out, it felt very real to me. So yeah, that movie I kind of related to. This is one of those movies where, you know, a lot of people hate it and a lot of people really like it. And I come down the like it side because I grew up in the woods and damn nature, you scary. Alright, challenge number 3. Favorite slasher. Now this just says slasher. It doesn't say favorite slasher movie. So I don't know if they want my favorite like character that's considered a slasher or if they want my favorite slasher movie. So I'm just going with both on this. For favorite slasher, I'm going with Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I watched that movie, and I actually watched it in college, and I watched it and I was kind of like, yeah, I guess this is an alright movie. Like, and I was thinking about it in my head as I was leaving class, and I was like, yeah, I guess that was pretty scary. Yeah, that had a couple of good moments in it. And the final shot of that movie takes place with Leatherface just holding up his chainsaw and just revving it up, just going to town. And it's at sunup, so it's this nice golden orange sunrise coming up, bathing the whole area in this golden light. I walked out of my class after seeing that, and the sun was coming down, so everything had that same golden light to it. And I was thinking to myself, yeah, that movie was pretty good. And then someone behind me revved up their motorcycle in the parking lot, and I jumped, turned around 180 degrees, and let out the highest pitched shriek, which I won't do because I'm not going to offend my neighbors, but trust me, it could have shattered glass. And then after I did that, I went, okay, actually that was a scary movie. That was a very terrifying film. But like I said, that was just my favorite slasher. If you're talking about favorite slasher movie, I gotta go with Tucker and Dale versus Evil. I am shocked how many people don't know about this movie. If you don't want to know about this movie, just skip ahead by 20 seconds. I will make this quick. Tucker and Dale vs. Evil is about a bunch of college kids who go into the woods and they see these redneck hillbilly guys in there and they're like, oh my god, these guys are going to tear us apart, they're going to just torture us, they're like the characters out of horror films. And then it turns out that no, they're just a couple of good old boys who went up there to fish and to go to their cabin and relax for the weekend.
There's some pancakes. You hate pancakes. I'm gonna make you something else.
And the teenagers keep trying to kill the hillbillies first, but they keep accidentally killing themselves. So it's kind of a slasher film from the point of view of the guys who we think would be the slashers. It's brilliant. It's one of the only movies ever, not just horror movies, but only movies ever, that as soon as I saw it, I had to immediately watch it again. That's how much I enjoyed that movie.
This is a suicide pact. These kids are coming out here and they're killing themselves all over the woods.
Oh my god, that makes so much sense.
The girl that we have, she can maybe explain the whole thing.
You got another one inside?
Yeah, she's in my bedroom.
Challenge number 4, favorite werewolf movie. I gotta go with The Howling on this one. I grew up as a big fan of werewolves, but I never really liked werewolf movies. I know that's weird, and that's because when I was growing up, most werewolf movies that I was allowed to see were like The Wolfman, where it was just, you know, it was just a hairy dude with fangs. It was not what, in my mind, I pictured werewolves being able to be. The Howling took that concept of werewolves that we always had and put them on steroids. It was big, giant, hulking wolf people with big giant ears and long snouts and fangs, and it was just terrifying to me. I know they've made better werewolf movies since then, but that one's still going to stick with me and I still just love it. Favorite monster movie. I'm going with another found footage movie on this one. I'm going with Cloverfield. The reason I'm going with Cloverfield on this one is because one of my biggest pet peeves whenever it comes to watching horror films is that whenever I watch it with someone else, there's always that time in which they will say, oh, well, if that was me, I would have done this. I mean, I can understand being scared eventually, but wouldn't you just turn around and fight the thing? Or, you know, why would you just keep running? If that was me, I would have done this. And it's like, no, if you're that guy who says that, you wouldn't. You know what you would do in the horror film? You would pee yourself and curl up in a ball and cry. That's what any of us would do, and there's no shame in it. And that is one of the reasons I love Cloverfield. Cloverfield is one of the few monster films out there that actually, to me, really sums up what you would actually do in a monster movie. In a monster movie, you can't fight it. You can't win. All you can do is run. Like Cloverfield got that scale of the monster just right. It made you feel how powerful it is compared to you, how small you are. All you can do is run and hide while the military tries to take care of this thing in the background. And that's what I love. I love those shots in Cloverfield where the monster is just way off in the background, but you can still see it. And even though it's nowhere near you, it's still dangerous because of the level of power it has. I remember I was living in Brooklyn at the time when that movie came out, and as soon as I got out of the theater, I just looked across the bay at the city and I was like, oh my god, I never realized that place is an island before. Every single time after that I ever had to go into the city, I was like, if something happens while I'm here, I'm screwed. I'm on an island, I can't get out. Next up, favorite vampire movie. I'm going with the 1980s version of Fright Night. I absolutely love that movie, and I love it for the same reasons I really love The Howling. It's because every time that you see vampires in horror films, they typically tend to be very suave, very mature, which the vampire in this movie is as well, but you rarely ever see them go full on to the levels that they can actually get to. And this just, to me, took all those powers that we know that vampires have and just cranked it up to 11, and then said it in a very modern saying. Well, modern at the time, it was in the 1980s. But still, like, it was in a white picket fence neighborhood. It's the kind of place where you could still live. And it was like, this seems kind of real. And yet at the same time, they're going to limits with the vampire mythos that I have not seen in a while. I absolutely love that film. Challenge number 7, favorite supernatural movie. I love The Evil Dead. The original one from 1981. Fantastic horror movie to me.
It is entitled Naturam de Manto, roughly translated, Book of the Dead. The book is bound in human flesh and inked in human blood.
I love it for multiple reasons. Number one, like I said, I grew up in the woods. You said a horror movie in the woods, you already got my money. You have already got my interest.
What's the matter with you? Did something in the woods do this to you?
No, it was the woods themselves. They're alive, actually, the trees.
But number 2, this movie was something that I hadn't seen before. Like, we had seen The Exorcist. Like, we had seen demonic possessions. We had never seen demons running wild. And once again, going back to what I was saying about Hellraiser, a lot of times not seeing the monster, not seeing the horror is the most terrifying thing of all. There's something in the woods. There's something doing stuff to people, and we never see what that thing actually is. We see the stuff it does, but still, what it's doing is left up to our imagination. But one of the things I absolutely love about Evil Dead is that it's kind of one of those movies that has like a tradition to it. You can't just go down to Best Buy and pick up a copy of Evil Dead, because Best Buy doesn't carry movies anymore. But even when they did, you couldn't just do that. Evil Dead was one of those films that everyone discovered because they had a friend who knew about it, and they had a VHS copy tape, and they would come over to your house, and you two would stay up at like 2 in the morning and pop it in and watch it, and that was the only way to fully experience Evil Dead for the first time. It was one of those that you had to hear about from someone else. And the biggest thing that I absolutely love about Evil Dead, not just that the monsters are creepy, not just that it has a very real setting, because once again, as someone who grew up in the woods, they shot that in the woods. They went way out there to shoot that thing, and I love that they actually did that. But what I love about is that this was a movie that was made with no budget, by people with no experience, with no equipment. They just went out there. This was ground floor filmmaking, and they just would make stuff up on the spot. I was reading a book about the making of this movie, and there were so many times in which they would actually go, well, this is the shot you want, but how are we gonna make this shot? How are we gonna get this shot? And then Sam Raimi, the director, would just go, give me some lumber, a hammer, and some nails, and I'm just gonna start building. And indeed he did. He built so many devices during the course of that movie in order to film the shots that he wanted, and that to me is so impressive. Like, anytime in which I feel like I'm not getting enough done, I pop in Evil Dead, and that inspires me, that movie. Challenge 8, favorite anthology. This was a tough one because I'm a big fan of the recent found footage series called VHS, and I really like that first one, but I'm going to have to go with Trick or Treat. This is one of those little hidden gems that was supposed to be a big screen release, but then for some reason it just went straight to video, or DVD or whatever it was. But for some reason it just went straight to DVD. It is an anthology that is all about just these little stories taking place on Halloween, and they've got like little stuff tied together, but every single one of them kind of has something to do with Halloween. Like, there's one dedicated to trick-or-treating, one dedicated to pumpkin carving, one dedicated to going out to the Halloween party, and it's really cool. Like, if you're a big fan of Halloween, like I am, this is like, it's a celebration of the night, but also it really did have good terrifying moments. The little kid, Sam, that kid is awesome. That kid needs to be one of those horror legends up there with Jason and Chucky and all them. Favorite exploitation or Grindhouse movie? I'm going with, a lot of people say that Exploitation and Grindhouse only counts if it was in the 60s and 70s. I'm going with one from the 90s, Dead Alive. This movie, again, it took zombies and just cranked it up to 11. But also, it was one of those early horror comedies that just perfectly mixed and matched the different elements of, like, you know, knowing when to take the horror parts high, knowing when to take the comedy parts high, knowing how to blend them together. It is just, it's Buster Keaton if he decided to do an exploitation film. If he decided to do, like, one of those gory horror films. And it just is gorgeous and incredibly creative. All the different ways that they come up with to kill creatures in this thing.
Party's over.
There are so many times in which they brutally murder a zombie, and I'm just laughing my head off because it's so crazy and so nuts. This is one of those movies that I had always heard hyped up to me, but it was even still better when I saw it. I cannot recommend that enough to people.
I kick ass for the Lord.
And last one for this video, challenge number 10's favorite psychological horror. Now, this is kind of an interesting one because everybody kind of has a different definition of what is a psychological horror film. And for me, I'm going to go with Cube. Now, to me, psychological horror is one in which you rarely ever actually see anything, you rarely ever actually see a monster or get anybody attacked. It's more about messing with the characters and messing with you, the audience. And I absolutely love Cube in that regard because Cube, you see people in such a stressful situation. It's about these people, they just find themselves suddenly in what appears to be some kind of a prison in which every single room is just a cube, but it has traps. Some rooms are just instant death, you go in. Some of them you have a chance of surviving, some of them are completely safe, but there's a weird code and they have some way of figuring out how to get around it, and it's a maze that they gotta go from one room to the next. It really does mess with you as an audience member, and it messes with the characters. You see them breaking down under the stress of all this, and you, the audience, you're full attention the whole time. You don't know what's gonna be in each room, and I love that in this movie. Okay folks, that was it for day one of this. Hopefully I will be back very soon before Halloween comes around to give you the next two parts of this. If you guys want to know more about this challenge yourself, I will put a link to where I found it down in the comment section below. So if you guys like this video, please leave a thumb up over here, leave a comment right there, please recommend it to your friends out there in the world, please subscribe. I don't actually know what the subscribe button is, I'm still new to YouTube, but thank you very much for watching this. Have a happy Halloween, and come back next time.